Picture it. It's the dead of July, 1968. You are lying in the very back of a massive, heavy steel station wagon. The vinyl seats are sticking to your legs, and the windows are rolled completely down because there is no air conditioning. Outside, the heat is radiating off the black asphalt in shimmering waves. You have been driving for 3 days. You are staring out at the endless, sun-baked desert, desperately waiting for the next roadside attraction to break the monotony. For decades, this was the great American rite of passage. Route 66 wasn't just a road, it was an adventure. If you ask the people who drove it back then, they all remember the exact same feeling. They remember the long, grueling drives through the pitch-black Mojave Desert, only to be saved by the sudden buzzing glow of a neon motel sign cutting through the dark like a beacon. They remember begging their parents to pull over for giant concrete dinosaurs, rattlesnake pits, and bizarre roadside diners. Back then, the drive was the actual vacation. You met people. You saw the country at eye level. But in the late 1950s, the American government decided that the journey was taking too long. They enacted the interstate highway system. The goal was pure, ruthless efficiency. The government built massive multi-lane freeways that deliberately bypassed the small towns, the neon motels, and the roadside diners. It was an assassination by infrastructure. As the station wagons moved to the interstates, the traffic vanished almost overnight. The towns that relied on that highway suffered an immediate economic heart attack. Today, if you know exactly where to look, you can exit the modern freeway and drive out into the brush to find the corpses of the towns that were left behind. These are not museums. They are the decaying, sun-bleached ruins of the ultimate American road trip. From water parks abandoned in the sand to boomtowns literally split in half by state lines, today we are taking a road trip through the graveyard of Route 66. To understand how quickly a town can die when the road moves, we have to travel to a place that technically existed in 2 realities at once. Deep in the arid plains, right where the Texas Panhandle crashes into New Mexico, lies the ghost town of Glenrio. In the 1940s and 1950s, Glenrio was an absolute gold mine. Because it physically straddled the state line, local businessmen used the bizarre geography to their advantage. Deaf Smith County in Texas was dry, so you could not sell alcohol there. But gas taxes in Texas were incredibly low. The town built massive, bustling gas stations on the Texas side of the border, and rowdy, neon-lit bars and motels on the New Mexico side. It was the perfect trap for exhausted travelers. You filled up your tank in Texas, walked across the dirt line, and bought a cold beer in New Mexico. For decades, it was a glowing oasis. The Little Juarez Diner was packed to the brim. The Texas Longhorn Motel, famous for its massive, flashing neon sign, had no vacancies. Glenrio was an independent, thriving ecosystem, fed entirely by the asphalt river of Route 66. But that river was about to be dammed. In 1973, the federal government finished construction on Interstate 40. The massive new highway was built just a few miles north of Glenrio. It didn't destroy the town physically, it simply bypassed it, and that was all it took. When the traffic moved to the interstate, the lifeblood of Glenrio was completely severed in a single afternoon. The gas stations dried up, the diner closed its doors, the motels went bankrupt, the residents packed their bags and left their homes to the blowing dust. Today, Glenrio is one of the most haunting sights in the American Southwest. The original 2-lane pavement of Route 66 still runs straight through the center of the ruins. The bones of the Texas Longhorn Motel sit completely gutted, its doors swinging in the wind, the walls riddled with bullet holes and covered in decades of graffiti. Recently, parts of the town have been fenced off or partially demolished, meaning this iconic piece of Americana is literally crumbling into the earth before our eyes. As we travel further west, the terrain becomes much more hostile. Route 66 forced travelers to cross the Mojave Desert, one of the hottest, driest places on the planet. And it was here, in the middle of nowhere, that businessmen built the most bizarre roadside attractions to force people to pull over. Nothing exemplifies this better than Lake Dolores. In the early 1960s, a local businessman named Bob Byers looked out at the barren, scorching sands of the Mojave and had an insane idea. He was going to build a massive water park. He dug a colossal artificial lake, filled it with water pumped from an underground aquifer, and surrounded it with towering steel water slides, zip lines, and bumper boats. It was the ultimate Route 66 mirage. Imagine driving for 10 hours in a car with no air conditioning, your radiator boiling over, the desert sun blinding you, and suddenly you see a massive, shimmering oasis of blue water and towering slides rising out of the sagebrush. Families slammed on their brakes. It became a legendary pit stop. But Lake Dolores was built for a specific era of travel. When Interstate 15 bypassed the old Route 66 alignment, the dynamic shifted. People were now driving faster, enclosed in air-conditioned cars, trying to get to Las Vegas or Los Angeles as quickly as possible. The concept of the roadside detour began to die. The park bled money. It was sold, rebranded, and briefly revived in the 1990s, but the era of the Route 66 tourist trap was officially over. In 2004, the park closed its gates for the final time. Today, Lake Dolores is a surreal, post-apocalyptic wasteland. The water is entirely gone, replaced by cracked, sun-baked concrete. The towering retro water slides still stand, but they are faded, rusted, and covered from top to bottom in vibrant graffiti. It looks like a theme park built at the end of the world. Urban explorers and skateboarders now roam the empty wave pools where families once splashed in the 1960s, a haunting monument to an American culture that simply moved on. When we talk about Route 66, we usually talk about the abandoned buildings, but the most terrifying ruins are not the motels or the diners. They are the actual roads themselves. Route 66 was not a single, permanent line drawn in the dirt. Over its 60-year lifespan, it was constantly being paved, redirected, and straightened. When engineers found a faster way through a mountain pass, they did not dig up the old road. They just painted a new one and left the old one to die. These forgotten stretches are known as the dead alignments. If you hike out into the deep wilderness of the Mojave Desert, far away from any modern cell service or civilization, you will eventually stumble across them. Hidden beneath the creeping desert brush, you will find perfectly preserved strips of original 1920s and 1930s asphalt. They are completely silent. There are no yellow lines anymore, just cracked, crumbling pavement leading off to nowhere. Walking down these dead alignments is an incredibly eerie experience. You are standing on the exact pavement where Okies fled the Dust Bowl in the 1930s. You are standing where World War II convoys rolled toward the Pacific. But today, the only sound is the wind. Along these dead stretches, you will find the ultimate ghosts of the highway. Because these roads were bypassed decades before the interstate even existed, the ruins here are ancient. You will find the collapsed, skeletal wooden frames of 1920s service stations, completely pulverized by a century of desert wind. You will find rusted frames of Model T Fords half buried in the sand. These dead alignments prove that Route 66 was not murdered all at once in the 1980s. It died a slow, agonizing death of 1,000 cuts, as America constantly chose speed and efficiency over the journey itself. Not every town on Route 66 died because of the interstate. One town was murdered by something entirely invisible, and the government had to literally wipe it off the face of the earth. As travelers took Route 66 through Missouri, many passed through or stopped in a bustling, working-class resort town called Times Beach. Located right on the Merrimack River, it was a popular summer getaway for families driving the Mother Road. But Times Beach had a problem: dust. The dirt roads in the town kicked up massive, blinding clouds of dust, during the hot Midwestern summers. In the early 1970s, the town hired a local waste oil hauler to spray the dirt roads with heavy oil to keep the dust down. It seemed like a cheap, effective solution. Kids played in the oily dirt. Cars drove over it, tracking it into their garages and diners. But the hauler had not just used motor oil. He had mixed it with highly toxic chemical waste containing dioxin, one of the most dangerous, cancer-causing chemicals known to man. For years, the residents of Times Beach lived, breathed, and played in this toxic dirt. Animals began dropping dead in the streets. People developed strange illnesses. When the EPA finally tested the soil in 1982, the results were apocalyptic. The entire town was a biohazard. The federal government did not try to clean the town. They bought it. They forced every single resident to evacuate, shut down the town, and sent men in full hazmat suits to bulldoze every house, diner, and motel into the earth. The contaminated debris was burned in a massive temporary incinerator. Today, if you drive Route 66 through Missouri, Times Beach simply does not exist. It is a ghost town without any ghosts. The area was eventually sanitized and turned into the Route 66 State Park. But if you walk the quiet, grassy trails today, you are walking over the graves of a vibrant American town that poisoned itself to death. Route 66 wasn't just roads and diners. It was a marvel of massive, terrifying infrastructure. And no structure was more infamous than the Chain of Rocks Bridge. Spanning over a mile across the muddy, treacherous waters of the Mississippi River, this bridge connected Illinois to Missouri. But it had a terrifying quirk. Right in the middle of the river, the bridge took a sharp, 22-degree turn. Imagine driving a heavy, 1950s station wagon with incredibly loose steering. You are suspended hundreds of feet above a raging river. The lanes are incredibly narrow. Two-way traffic is flying past you, and suddenly, the entire bridge bends blindly in the middle of the sky. For decades, it was one of the most white-knuckle, terrifying bottlenecks on the entire Route 66 journey. Drivers would literally pull over and make their spouses drive across it because they were too paralyzed by fear. But when the Interstate Highway Act birthed the massive, straight-line bridges of Interstate 270, the Chain of Rocks Bridge became instantly obsolete. In 1968, it was closed to traffic. For decades, this massive feat of steel engineering sat completely abandoned, rusting over the Mississippi River. The steel decking rotted away. It became a terrifying, lawless place, favored by urban explorers and local gangs. While it has since been saved from demolition and converted into a pedestrian walking path, the sheer scale of this abandoned highway infrastructure is breathtaking. Standing at the 22-degree bend today, with the wind howling through the rusted steel girders, you can almost hear the phantom hum of a million classic cars that crossed it. As we push further west into Arizona, the roadside traps became more desperate, and the history became much darker. Welcome to Two Guns, Arizona, a place that many historians believe is genuinely cursed. In the 1920s, a man named Harry Miller recognized that Route 66 was going to bring thousands of bored tourists right past his property. But Two Guns was not just empty desert. It was the site of a brutal historic massacre where a group of Apache warriors had been burned alive inside a cave by their Navajo rivals. Instead of respecting the dead, Miller saw a business opportunity. He built a massive, sprawling roadside tourist trap right on top of the massacre site. He sold the skulls of the victims to passing travelers. He built a bizarre roadside zoo out of heavy desert stone, filling it with mountain lions, panthers, and Gila monsters to force cars to pull over. But the curse of Two Guns struck back with brutal efficiency. Miller was mauled by his own mountain lions. He was bitten by venomous snakes. His store burned to the ground. He was eventually tried for murder after shooting a man over a land dispute. Despite multiple attempts to rebuild Two Guns throughout the golden age of Route 66, The town continually suffered from massive fires, bankruptcies, and sudden deaths. When Interstate 40 was blasted through the rock just a few hundred yards away, the town finally died, permanently. Today, Two Guns is one of the most surreal ruins in the American West. The massive stone cages of the abandoned zoo still sit on the edge of the canyon, completely empty and covered in vibrant, chaotic graffiti. The ruins of the gas station and the drained swimming pool look like an ancient desert Stonehenge. It is a monument to the ultimate greed of the Route 66 tourist trap, reclaimed by the desert it tried to exploit. Just a few miles down the road from the cursed ruins of Two Guns, you will find one of the most iconic, heartbreaking symbols of the death of Route 66. During the 1950s, the side of the highway was a war zone for attention. You had to have the biggest, brightest, most ridiculous sign to get a family to hit the brakes. The Twin Arrows trading post understood this assignment perfectly. They planted two massive, 25-foot-tall wooden arrows directly into the desert dirt. For decades, the Twin Arrows diner and trading post was a legendary stop. Travelers would pull over, snap a photo in front of the massive yellow and red arrows, grab a cup of coffee, and buy turquoise jewelry. It was the epitome of mid-century American road trip culture. But again, the interstate was a ruthless killer. When Interstate 40 opened, the exit for Twin Arrows was poorly designed, making it a hassle for drivers to pull off and get back on. The business dried up almost overnight. The diner closed in 1995, and the property was completely abandoned. Today, the giant wooden arrows are still there, but they are a tragic shadow of their former glory. The desert sun has bleached the vibrant paint into a sickly, peeling white. The wood is rotting and splintering. The diner behind them is completely gutted, with the roof caving in and the windows shattered. Standing in the shadow of the Twin Arrows today perfectly encapsulates the tragedy of Route 66. These massive monuments were built to welcome millions of Americans, to promise them a hot meal and a cold drink in the middle of a brutal desert. Today, they point down at nothing but cracked asphalt, dead weeds, and the ghosts of a vanished America. Those rotting wooden arrows, the bent steel of the Chain of Rocks Bridge, the poisoned dirt of Times Beach, and the empty concrete pools of Lake Dolores all tell the same story. We look back at the golden age of Route 66 with a deep, aching nostalgia. We miss the neon signs, the bizarre tourist traps, and the fundamental idea that the journey was supposed to be just as important as the destination. We miss the America that existed at 50 miles an hour, with the windows rolled down, the desert wind in our faces, and the radio crackling in the dashboard. But progress is ruthless. The modern interstate system connected the country faster than ever before, but it severed the arteries of hundreds of small American towns in the process. The ruins we explored today are the price we paid for that speed. They are the graves of the Mother Road. They stand as silent, sun-bleached reminders of a time when we weren't just blindly racing to the finish line. We were actually enjoying the ride. If you could take a classic 1960s station wagon and drive down just one abandoned stretch of Route 66, which of these forgotten places would you pull over to explore? Let me know in the comments below. We read every single one. And remember, we are pushing incredibly hard to hit our goal of 1,000 subscribers by the end of May. If you love taking these road trips into the forgotten, abandoned history of our world, please hit that subscribe button. It takes 1 second, it is completely free, and it means the absolute world to us. Stay safe, keep exploring, and we will see you in the next video.